When I woke up in the hospital, the white lights above me blurred into halos. The doctor's voice sounded distant. "We can save her, but it'll cost about $7,000. I wasn't really dying. I was pretending. A cruel experiment to see if my family would choose love or convenience. From the corner of my eye, I watched my mother's face twist with hesitation. My father crossed his arms and muttered, "She's an adult. Let her deal with it." Then they turned away. Just like that. My throat went dry. Even knowing it was fake, the rejection felt real, cutting deeper than any scalpel could. But when everyone else abandoned me, one person didn't. My grandmother, Evelyn, showed up with trembling hands and a small envelope of money. She didn't know that behind my tears, I was hiding a $95 million secret. I used to think silence was peaceful until it became the only sound I knew. My name is Grace Miller. I'm 30 years old, and I make a living with my voice. I record commercials, narrate documentaries, even bring animated characters to life. People all over the country hear me every day. Yet no one in my own family ever really listened. I grew up in Twin Falls, a small Idaho town where everyone knows each other's business except mine. My father, Richard, owned a chain of auto repair shops and ruled our house like he was still in the garage, loud, commanding, and always covered in the smell of oil and anger. My mother, Clara, was his perfect mirror, polished, polite, obsessed with appearances. She smiled at church and gossiped at dinner, but when the door closed, that smile vanished. I was the middle child, the invisible one. My older sister, Lauren, was the golden girl who could do no wrong, and my younger brother, Ethan, was the spoiled dreamer who never faced consequences. Me? I was just there. When I was 13, my parents forgot my birthday. Again, they remembered only when Lauren teased me at breakfast. Guess who's officially a teenager, not that anyone cares. I laughed it off, pretending it didn't sting. But that night, I cried into my pillow, wondering what I'd done wrong to be so forgettable. Even my accomplishments meant nothing. When I brought home a statewide poetry award in high school, Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "Poems don't pay bills, Grace," he said. "But she won first place," Grandma protested from across the table. "That's cute," Dad replied. "Now pass the salt." Grandma Evelyn, my mother's mother, was the only one who saw me. Her tiny farm sat 20 miles outside of town, a patchwork of cornfields and old fences that creaked in the wind. Every summer I'd spend weeks there, helping her bake butter cookies and listening to her stories about kind hearts surviving cruel times. She'd stroke my hair and say, "You have the voice of someone meant to be heard, sweetheart. Don't let silence win." Those words kept me alive. After college, I moved to Boise and built a small life of my own. A studio apartment, an old microphone, and my voice. No fancy car, no family visits, just quiet independence. My parents said it was a phase. Lauren said it was sad. Ethan never called. I told myself I was fine. I had work, freedom, and peace. But some nights, when the red recording light flickered on, I'd pause and whisper into the mic, "Does anyone hear me?" The silence that followed always answered, "No." Still, Grandma called every Sunday, without fail. She'd ask about my jobs, my health, my meals. Sometimes she'd send me jars of homemade jam, wrapped in old newspaper. I'd smile every time I opened one. I didn't know then that, soon, I'd be forced to confront exactly how deep my family's silence went, that I'd have to fake dying just to see if any of them would care. And when I found out the truth, it would shatter everything I believed about love, blood, and family. It started like any other Tuesday. I was sitting in a tiny coffee shop in downtown Boise, editing an audiobook about finding happiness through mindfulness. The irony wasn't lost on me. The only happiness I felt was caffeine keeping me upright. Then my coworker Mia texted our group chat. "Powerball's insane this week. $95 million jackpot. Come on, Grace, it's your turn to get lucky." I snorted, typing back. The only jackpot I ever hit is when my Wi-Fi works. But when I walked home later that evening, I passed a convenience store glowing under flickering neon lights. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe a part of me, the child still craving something extraordinary, wanted to believe in miracles. I handed the cashier 2 crumpled dollars. He smiled and said, "Good luck, sweetheart." "Thanks," I laughed. "I'll probably need it." I tucked the ticket into my wallet and forgot about it. 3 days later, while microwaving instant noodles, I saw the winning numbers flash on TV. 718293651 Powerball 12. Out of habit, I pulled the old ticket from my purse and started checking. One match, two, three. My hands started to tremble. By the time I reached the Powerball number, I stopped breathing. Every single number matched. The chopsticks slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the floor. The noodles boiled over. I didn't move. My eyes locked on that tiny piece of paper like it was alive. "Is this real?" I whispered. I checked the website twice. Then again. Then again. $95 million. $95 million. The world should have spun, but it didn't. The room was dead silent, except for the hum of my refrigerator. I sat there for an hour, clutching the ticket, waiting to wake up. But reality came crashing in memories of my parents fighting over money, of Dad yelling about bills, Mom criticizing neighbors' houses, Lauren bragging about her husband's income, Ethan begging for loans he'd never repay. Money in my family didn't heal. It destroyed. So I made a decision. No one could know. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer, David Kessler, whose name I found online. He was calm, sharp, and surprisingly kind. "You did the right thing, Miss Miller," he said. "We'll set up an anonymous trust. No one will trace the funds to you." He explained taxes, investments, and a word I'd never heard before: discretion. After legal deductions, I'd receive $58 million. David helped me create the Silverline Trust, a name I chose because even the darkest clouds had a silver lining. When it was done, I sat in his office, signing the final paper with a shaking hand. David looked at me and smiled. "You're officially wealthy, Grace. How does it feel?" I thought for a long moment. "Empty," I said. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy champagne or a new car. I sat on my apartment floor eating leftover noodles and staring at the city lights outside my window. For the first time in years, I realized the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating. I had all the money I'd ever need and no one to call. That's when a strange thought crept in. If they didn't care about me when I was poor, would they care now if I were dying? It was cruel, but curiosity burned deeper than guilt. And that single thought would soon lead me to the cruelest experiment of my life. The idea came to me one sleepless night, while rain battered against my apartment window. I sat staring at the glowing digits in my bank app, more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life, and felt nothing. Not pride. Not joy. Just an ache that wouldn't leave. If love was real, it had to exist without money. And if my family's love couldn't survive when I had nothing, maybe it never existed at all. So I decided to test it. A cruel, deliberate experiment. I crafted a story so ordinary it could be real. A minor endocrine tumor, nothing life-threatening, but dangerous if untreated. The procedure cost $7,000, not a fortune, just enough to reveal their hearts. I didn't call first. I wanted to see their faces. The drive back to Twin Falls felt heavier than ever before. The familiar landmarks, the water tower, the small diner where Dad used to take us for pancakes, the endless fields all looked faded, like memories that had lost their color. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, the porch light was on. For a brief second, I almost turned back, but I took a deep breath and walked in. Mom opened the door first, wearing her perfect pearl earrings. "Grace? Why didn't you call ahead?" Her smile was more surprise than warmth. "Hi, Mom. I just needed to talk." Dad sat on the couch, watching a football game. He glanced up, nodded once, then looked back at the TV. Lauren was there too, scrolling on her phone, and Ethan lounged beside her, shoes on the coffee table. I stood there like an outsider in my own home. "Grace, I went to the doctor last week. They found a tumor. It's not deadly, but they said I need surgery soon." "Clara." "Oh, honey." She frowned, not out of worry, but calculation. "How much will it cost?" "Grace." "About $7,000. Richard, insurance doesn't cover it?" "Grace." "No. I I was hoping you could help me. The room went silent, except for the muffled sound of the football commentator shouting, "Touchdown!" on TV. Dad muted it, sighed, and leaned back. "Richard, you're 30, Grace. You've got a job. Handle your own problems." "Grace? Dad, I don't have savings for that right now." "Clara. You know, your brother's drowning in student loans, and Lauren's helping with Mom's birthday dinner. We're all tight." My voice cracked. "So, that's a no?" Mom gave a sympathetic tilt of the head. "You'll figure it out, sweetheart. You always do." Lauren didn't even look up from her phone. "Lauren, 7 grand? That's not so bad. You can take out a loan, or sell your car." "My car? My 2-year-old Honda that barely started in the winter." Ethan chuckled. "At least it's not cancer." Something inside me snapped. Not anger, just a kind of quiet collapse. I forced a smile. "You're right. It's not cancer." I stood up, clutching my bag. "Thanks for listening." Dad unmuted the TV before I reached the door. No one said goodbye. Outside, the rain had stopped, but puddles shimmered in the driveway. I sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the house, the home that had never really been mine. My throat burned as I whispered, "I just wanted to know if you'd care." When I finally started the engine, the headlights caught the apple tree out front, the one Grandma and I had planted when I was 10. It was still there, gnarled but alive. I drove off into the night, tears blurring the road. By the time I reached Boise, I already knew the truth. The people who were supposed to love me most would rather save money than save me. But part of me still hoped maybe one person would be different. The next morning, I picked up the phone and dialed the only number that ever made me feel safe. Grace, whispering, "Grandma, I need to tell you something." The phone barely rang once before I heard her familiar, trembling voice. "Evelyn." "Grace? Oh, sweetheart. Is everything all right?" "Grace. Not really, Grandma. The doctor said I need surgery. It's nothing too serious, but it costs $7,000. I don't know what to do." There was a pause. I could almost picture her sitting in that old wooden rocking chair by the kitchen window, clutching the phone with her thin fingers, the afternoon sun spilling across her wrinkled hands. "Evelyn. Oh, my poor girl. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Grace. I didn't want to worry you." "Evelyn. You're all I ever worry about." Her words cracked something inside me. Even knowing my illness was fake, I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. "Grace. It's fine, Grandma. I'll figure it out." "Evelyn. No. You'll let me help." I tried to protest, but she had already made up her mind. "Evelyn. I'll come to Boise tomorrow morning. Don't you dare move from that bed." The next day, I waited at the bus station under a gray sky. When the old silver bus pulled in, I saw her tiny, fragile, with a worn brown coat and her hair pinned neatly. In one hand she carried a cloth bag filled with vegetables. In the other, a small tin box I recognized immediately. She smiled the moment she saw me. "Grace!" I ran to her and hugged her tight. She smelled like lavender soap and baked sugar. "Evelyn, you've gotten thinner," she scolded softly. "You're not eating enough." "Grace. I'm fine. Really." "Evelyn, don't you lie to me. I've been your grandmother too long for that." We took the bus back to my apartment. She looked around, nodding approvingly at my tiny space. "It's cozy. But where's the sunshine?" She pulled the curtains open, flooding the room with light. Then she reached into her coat pocket and took out an envelope secured with a rubber band. Her hands shook a little as she held it out to me. "Evelyn, there's $3,200 here. It's all I could get today. I'll find the rest somehow, maybe sell the old ring your grandfather gave me. It's just jewelry. But you're my girl." Ah, I froze. The air in my chest turned heavy. "Grandma, no. You can't. I can't take your money." "Evelyn. Grace, listen to me. I've lived 82 years. What else is money for, if not to help the ones we love?" She pressed the envelope into my hands, her gaze unwavering. "You'll take it, and you'll get better. That's all I want." I broke. I hugged her, crying against her shoulder like a child. For a long time, she just held me, her frail arms stronger than anyone else's I'd ever known. That night, I made us tea. She brought out her tin box, the one that had smelled like heaven since I was little, filled with her homemade butter cookies. "Evelyn, Do you remember when you were 10 and we burned the first batch? Grace, laughing through tears. You blamed the oven, Evelyn. And you said maybe it was a sign we should eat ice cream instead. Smart girl. We laughed until my stomach hurt. For a moment, it felt like the world had reset, like all the loneliness, the rejection, the tests, and the lies had melted away under her warmth. Later, when she fell asleep on my couch, I stood by the window watching her. Her face looked peaceful under the dim light. In that silence, I realized something: she wasn't just the only one who cared. She was the only one who ever had. And I made a silent promise right then. Someday, somehow, I'd make sure Grandma Evelyn never had to worry about anything again. Even if she never learned that the poor, struggling granddaughter she'd just given her savings to was secretly worth $95 million. I couldn't stop thinking about her after that weekend. Grandma Evelyn returned to her small farmhouse in Twin Falls, leaving behind the envelope I still couldn't bring myself to touch. It sat on my desk, old, crinkled, wrapped in a rubber band, a reminder of everything money should mean. I stared at it for hours that night, the numbers glowing in my bank account feeling colder than ever. She had given me nearly all her savings, and I was sitting on millions. The guilt gnawed at me until it became unbearable. So I decided to do something that actually felt right. The next morning, I called my lawyer, David Kessler. Grace. David, I want to buy a house, but it can't look expensive, just warm, quiet, something with a garden. David, chuckling. You're probably the first lottery winner I've met who asked for something smaller. Grace, I don't want big. I want peace. After a week of searching, I found it: a cream-colored cottage on the outskirts of Boise, with a porch, 3 bedrooms, and a little patch of land filled with wild lavender. The moment I saw it, I thought of Grandma's soap, her scent, her warmth. It felt like her. I bought it the next day, paid in full. No one but David knew. Then I drove to Twin Falls and knocked on Grandma's door. She opened it, surprised. Grace, what are you doing here on a weekday? Grace, I want to show you something. Evelyn, you didn't buy another sickly plant that needs my advice again, did you? Grace, laughing. Maybe, but you'll have to see for yourself. She grabbed her coat and followed me into the car, still confused. During the drive, she kept asking questions I wouldn't answer. You're smiling too much, she teased. What kind of trouble are you hiding, young lady? When we arrived, I parked in front of the cottage. The afternoon sun painted the lavender fields gold. She stepped out slowly, her hand covering her mouth. Evelyn. Oh, Grace, it's beautiful. Who lives here? Grace. We do. She blinked, not understanding. Grace, you can't mean... Grace. Yes. It's ours. I bought it for us. You're moving in with me. Her eyes filled with tears, the kind she tried to hide behind laughter. Evelyn. Sweetheart, no. I can't let you spend your money on me. Grace. You already did, Grandma. You gave me everything that mattered. She reached for my hand, trembling. You're sure? Grace. I've never been more sure of anything. That afternoon, we sat on the porch steps, sipping tea while she watched the wind dance through the lavender. It smells like heaven, she whispered. You remembered. We spent the next few days moving her belongings, her rocking chair, her photo albums, and that tin cookie box that somehow made every place feel like home. I helped her hang her favorite curtains in her new room. She insisted on paying for groceries, which led to an argument that ended in laughter and cookies. At night, she'd hum old songs while I worked on voiceover projects upstairs. For the first time, my apartment's loneliness was replaced by the soft clinking of her teacup, the quiet rhythm of life shared with someone who truly cared. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about belonging. Sometimes, I'd wake up early just to hear her humming through the kitchen, the smell of bread filling the house. She'd look at me and smile. You finally look happy, Grace. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I was. But even as peace settled into our lives, a part of me couldn't forget the silence that had greeted me at my parents' house, the blank stares, the indifference, the way they turned away for $7,000. That wound still pulsed beneath the calm surface. And soon, something would happen that would rip it open again, this time, in front of the whole town. The following months felt like a dream, not because of the money, but because of how simple life had become. Every morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and Grandma Evelyn singing off-key to her radio. She'd hum some old country tune while trimming the lavender, and I'd record voiceovers upstairs, smiling to myself. For once, the house wasn't filled with silence. It was filled with life. But inside me, a storm was still brewing. I couldn't forget that night at my parents' home, their cold expressions, my father's voice telling me to handle my own problems. The memory replayed whenever I looked at the old envelope Grandma had given me. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Grandma told me about a neighbor back in Twin Falls. Evelyn. Poor Mrs. Dalton. Her roof's been leaking for months. The town keeps promising to help, but no one ever does. She lives alone, you know. Grace. No one's helping her? Evelyn. They say there's no budget. There's never a budget when it's the poor who need it. Her words struck me like lightning. All this time, I'd been hoarding my secret, terrified of how my family might twist it. But maybe, just maybe, I could use it for something that mattered. The next morning, I called David Kessler. Grace, I want to start something, a foundation. Quiet, anonymous, focused on helping the forgotten. David, we can do that. What do you want to call it? Grace, Silverline Hope. Over the next few months, the foundation took shape. The first project, scholarships for underprivileged students in Twin Falls. The second, a new town library, something my high school never had. The third, and largest, a community health clinic, offering free basic care and low-cost treatment. It felt poetic, the illness I'd faked, becoming the inspiration for real healing. David handled the logistics. I stayed anonymous. When construction began, he sent me progress photos. Steel beams, white walls, a sunlit waiting room. Every picture made me cry. Then, one day, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was an invitation from the Twin Falls City Council. The Silverline Hope Community Clinic will open this Saturday. We'd be honored if Miss Grace Miller, the foundation's anonymous benefactor, would attend. I froze. I'd never planned to reveal myself, but when Grandma read the letter, she smiled. Evelyn, you should go. You gave that town something beautiful. Don't hide from it. Grace. But what if they're there, Evelyn? Then let them see who you've become. So we went. The morning of the ceremony was bright and golden, the kind of day that made Twin Falls look almost innocent again. The new clinic gleamed at the edge of town glass doors, white pillars, a little garden out front. We sat quietly in the back row. Grandma wore her green knitted sweater, holding my hand like she used to when I was a child. Evelyn. It's beautiful, Grace. I'm proud of you, Grace. You're the reason I did it. Before I could say more, my heart dropped. My parents walked in, followed by Lauren and Ethan. They hadn't seen me yet. Mom looked immaculate as ever, her hair perfectly styled. Dad's stride was as stern as always. Lauren was pushing her baby stroller, and Ethan looked half awake, scrolling his phone. I sank lower in my seat, but fate had other plans. Halfway through the mayor's speech, he announced, "And now, we invite the benefactor whose generosity made this clinic possible, Miss Grace Miller." I froze. Grandma's eyes widened. Evelyn. Grace? Grace, whispering. I didn't know he'd do that. People turned, clapping. My parents' heads whipped around. Their eyes widened, confusion, disbelief, then shock. I stood up slowly, my knees trembling, and walked to the podium. The sunlight pouring through the glass caught the tears I was trying to hide. I took a deep breath and spoke. Grace, a few months ago, I was lying in a hospital bed. I needed $7,000 for treatment. My family said no. They had their reasons, maybe fear, maybe pride. But I realized there are others like me, people who get turned away because help costs too much. The crowd fell silent. Even my voice quivered. But I didn't stop. Grace, today, I'm donating $5 million to make sure no one here is ever turned away again. The room erupted in applause. I saw people crying, hugging. Cameras flashed. But all I saw was my family frozen, pale, speechless. Dad's jaw clenched. Mom's lips parted in shock. Lauren's mouth fell open. Ethan's phone slipped from his hand. I looked at them one last time and said, Grace, sometimes You have to lose love to understand who deserves it. Then I stepped down from the stage, returned to Grandma's side, and squeezed her hand. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Evelyn, you did the right thing, my girl." The applause still thundered behind us, but all I heard was her trembling voice, soft, proud, and full of love. That was the day the whole town learned who Grace Miller really was, and the day my family realized what they had thrown away for the price of $7,000. That night, after the ceremony, I thought the noise in my head would finally fade, but it didn't. Every cheer, every handshake from strangers replayed in my mind like echoes in an empty hall. None of them mattered. The only faces I couldn't stop seeing were theirs, my parents' faces frozen in shock, my sister's fake smile slipping, my brother's eyes wide with disbelief. I told myself it was over. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd made my point. But then my phone rang. Dad. I stared at the screen for a long time before I answered. "Richard, where are you?" His voice was cold, tight. "Grace. Driving back to Boise." "Richard. No. Come home now. Your mother and siblings are here. We need to talk." It wasn't a request. It was a command. I looked at Grandma sitting beside me in the passenger seat. She'd been quiet the whole ride, watching the dark highway roll by. She reached out and touched my arm gently. "Evelyn, you don't owe them anything, Grace." "Grace. I know. But I need to hear what they'll say." The house looked exactly the same porch light, the same chipped mailbox, the same coldness seeping from its walls, but stepping inside that night felt different. Everyone was waiting in the living room like a courtroom scene. Dad in his armchair, jaw tight. Mom perched on the couch, hands clenched in her lap. Lauren and Ethan against the wall, whispering to each other. No one greeted us. "Richard. Sit down." "Grace. I'll stand." The silence stretched, thick enough to choke on. Finally, Dad spoke. "Richard. You owe us an explanation. That clinic, the donation $5 million? Where did that come from?" I met his gaze steadily. "Grace. From the lottery. I won it months ago. 95 million. Mom gasped. Lauren's eyes widened. Ethan's mouth literally dropped open. "Clara. 95 million? Grace. After taxes. About 58. It's been handled legally through a trust." The room went dead still. Then, one by one, their expressions shifted. Shock melted into calculation. Dad leaned forward, his voice suddenly soft, too soft. "Richard. Grace. You should have told us. We could have helped you manage it properly. I know the business world. We could invest together. Maybe open another auto shop or a franchise." Mom nodded eagerly. "Clara. Your father's right. We're family, sweetheart. Families share things." Lauren crossed her arms, pretending nonchalance. "Lauren. I'm opening a boutique downtown. It's small, but with just a little help. Ethan and I could use a car, just something nice for work. You know, a BMW or whatever, nothing crazy." I stared at them, each taking turns asking, demanding, scheming. Not one of them asked if I was happy, or how I'd been living, or even why I'd kept it a secret. It wasn't love they felt now. It was hunger. "Finally," I said quietly. "Grace." "No." Everything froze. "Richard." "Excuse me?" "Grace." I said no. "I'm not investing. I'm not lending. I'm not giving you anything." Mom's face fell into shock. Lauren scoffed. Ethan muttered, "Unbelievable." Dad slammed his palm on the table. The sound echoed through the house. "Richard, don't you dare talk to me like that. We raised you. You think you'd have made it this far without us?" "Grace. Raised me? You ignored me. You left me to rot when I asked for $7,000 to save my life." "Richard. That was different." "Grace. No. That was the truth." The room erupted, voices overlapping, accusations flying. Mom cried. Lauren shouted something about family loyalty. Ethan muttered curses under his breath. And then a voice cut through the chaos. "Evelyn. Enough." Every head turned. Grandma Evelyn stood by the doorway, frail but steady, her eyes glinting sharper than ever. "Evelyn. You don't get to yell at her. Not after what you did." "Clara. Mother, please." "Evelyn. No. I won't be quiet this time." She pointed at each of them. Evelyn. When she came here begging for help, you all turned away. $7,000. You said no because she wasn't worth it. And now you sit here, hands out, pretending you care? Shame on you. Her voice trembled, but it carried more power than any of them had ever held. No one spoke. Even Dad sat back, deflated. Evelyn. Grace owes you nothing. She's already given this town more than you ever will. The only thing she should give now is forgiveness, and only if she chooses to. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I took Grandma's arm gently. Grace. Let's go. As we reached the door, Dad's voice followed us, low and bitter. Richard. You'll regret this, Grace. I turned, meeting his eyes one last time. Grace. I already did. Years ago. We left the house in silence. Outside, the air was cold and still. Grandma squeezed my hand as we walked to the car. Evelyn. You did the right thing. Grace. It doesn't feel right, Evelyn. That's because doing what's right rarely feels easy. As the engine started, I looked back one last time. Through the window, I saw my parents arguing, Lauren pacing, Ethan checking his phone. Nothing had changed. They were still chasing money, and I was finally done chasing love. But fate, it seemed, wasn't finished with me yet, because soon, something would happen that would test me one more time, not my pride this time, but my heart. 2 months passed after that night. I didn't call my parents again, and they didn't call me. At first, it felt like relief, a deep, quiet calm after years of noise. But then the guilt started to creep in. Even when you grow up unloved, a small part of you keeps waiting for love to return. Life with Grandma Evelyn settled into a soft rhythm. She tended the lavender garden every morning, humming while I worked upstairs in my little studio. Some nights, I'd sit beside her on the porch, the air filled with the smell of rain and cookies, and I'd almost believe that the world had forgiven me. Until one evening, when the phone rang. The caller ID made my heart drop. Lauren. I hesitated, then picked up. Grace. Hello? Lauren. Grace. It's Dad. He's in the hospital. The words hit like ice water. Grace. What happened? Lauren. Heart attack. The doctor said it was bad. He's stable, but they're talking about surgery. Mom's losing it. I stood frozen, gripping the phone so tightly it hurt. After everything, the cruelty, the greed, the shouting, he was still my father. And I couldn't let him die while I sat comfortably in silence. Grace. I'll be there tonight. Grandma heard everything. She didn't try to stop me, didn't tell me what to do. She just nodded, her voice soft. Evelyn. Do what your heart tells you, sweetheart, not your anger. I drove to Twin Falls through the night, headlights cutting through the fog. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and heartbreak. When I entered the waiting room, I saw them. Mom pacing, Lauren crying quietly, Ethan sitting slouched in a corner, his phone nowhere in sight for once. Mom turned the moment she saw me. Her eyes were red, her voice cracked. Clara. Grace. You came. Grace. How is he? Lauren. They need to operate soon. It's expensive. Tens of thousands. We don't have that kind of money. The unspoken question hung in the air. They didn't ask directly, but I could see it in their eyes. Will you pay? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I went to find the doctor. He was kind but blunt. Doctor. We caught it in time, but he needs immediate surgery. The hospital requires payment up front. I nodded slowly. Grace. Send the bill to this name, Silverline Hope Foundation. Tell them it's urgent. He blinked in surprise. Doctor. You're the donor? Grace. Doesn't matter. Just make sure he gets what he needs. I signed the paperwork under the foundation's name. It was anonymous, invisible, just like I'd always been. For 3 days, I stayed in the hospital, sleeping in chairs, bringing Mom coffee, helping where I could. They never knew I'd paid the bills. When the surgery ended, the doctor told them the good news. Doctor, your husband's stable now. If the payment hadn't gone through so quickly, we might have lost him. Clara. Payment? But who? Doctor. An anonymous benefactor. Mom's eyes filled with confusion. Lauren frowned. Ethan just whispered, lucky us. I didn't say a word. When Dad woke up, he looked at me weakly from his bed. For the first time in my life, his eyes didn't hold disappointment or control, just exhaustion. Richard. You came, Grace. Of course I did. He nodded, too tired to speak more. I held his hand for a moment. It was cold, fragile, and in that moment, all the anger I'd been carrying began to dissolve. A week later, we returned home to Boise. Grandma was waiting on the porch, her eyes knowing before I even spoke. Evelyn, you paid, didn't you? Grace. I couldn't let him die, Grandma. No matter what he did. Evelyn. That's love, Grace. Real love, the kind that doesn't need to be deserved. I smiled sadly. Grace. Please don't tell them. I don't want them to feel they owe me anything. She hesitated, then said softly, Evelyn. Some truths must be known, not for your sake, for theirs. 3 days later, she proved her point. I was baking cookies when Grandma came into the kitchen, holding the phone. Evelyn, it was your mother, I told her. My heart stopped. Grace. Grandma. Why? Evelyn. Because people can't repent if they don't know what they've been forgiven for. That weekend, the doorbell rang. Standing there was my entire family. Mom's eyes were swollen. Dad leaned heavily on his cane. Lauren held her baby, and Ethan kept his head down. Clara. Can we come in? I nodded. The Lavender house had never been so quiet. They sat around the table, awkward and small, like strangers. Then Mom spoke first, voice trembling. Clara. Grace. We know what you did. For your father. For the clinic. For all of it. And I don't have words big enough for how sorry I am. Dad looked down. Shame written across his face. Richard. I was wrong. About you. About everything. I thought strength meant control. I didn't see that it meant compassion. Thank you for saving my life. Lauren sniffled, her mascara smudging. Lauren. I was jealous. Of your independence, of how Grandma loved you. I took it out on you. I'm sorry. Ethan finally looked up. Ethan. I've been stupid. All I ever did was take. But you still helped us. I don't deserve to be your brother. Tears blurred my vision. For years, I had dreamed of hearing these words: apologies, understanding, remorse. Now that they were here, they didn't feel like triumph. They felt like release. Grace. I'm not angry anymore. I just wanted you to see me. Not my money, not what I could give me. Mom reached across the table, taking my hand. Clara. We see you now. For the first time, I believed her. Grandma smiled softly at the end of the table, her eyes glistening. Evelyn. Now, how about we eat before these cookies get cold? Everyone laughed, fragile, awkward laughter, but real. That night, as the sun dipped behind the lavender fields, I stood on the porch with Grandma. Grace. Do you think they really changed? Evelyn. Maybe. But even if they didn't, you did. That's what matters. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, breathing in the scent of lavender and home. I used to think winning the lottery would change everything that money could buy: love, repair old wounds, make people see me. But I was wrong. What changed everything wasn't the money. It was the moment I stopped needing their approval and started choosing love, the kind that expects nothing in return. Grandma looked up at me, smiling her tired, gentle smile. Evelyn. You found your voice, Grace. And this time, I knew she was right. Because for the first time in my life, when I spoke, I didn't need the world to listen. I already had everything that mattered.